Welcome to the Lost Fed podcast, where we are helping you to get back to your passion and purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Melodie Chan, and in this episode of Destination People, Rob and I discuss how to think about personal development and career growth versus just climbing a career ladder, and how we can appropriately support that individual and keep them engaged in the business. All right, Rob, I've got a scenario for you. So I've got a really talented employee and they have just started with us, let's say for 6 months, and they're already looking for that next move. And so this is in the space of the animal health technologist. And this person already is putting their hand up and is saying, I want to be a team lead. I want more responsibility. How do you manage a person like that?
Well, first of all, you celebrate it. It's obviously a fantastic thing that someone wants to contribute, wants to grow and develop. So I think from a starting point, I think it's great news. I think sometimes we can be a bit, oh God, I've nowhere for them to go, right? I don't have a job specific or a job title and so on. So I think first of all, just celebrate it. Just celebrate the fact you've hired well. You've got someone that's ambitious and wants to contribute to the growth of your business too. So that's fantastically exciting. Um, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I know we've talked about this before, but this kind of the challenge about the difference between kind of your career, your professional development versus your job. And I think, a job is something which is kind of, in a way, it's finite. It's encapsulated within a specific job title or a role. And I've been asked many times over the years, can you help me apply for this next job, this next promotion? I ask a simple question. Well, why do you want that job? And the answer really typically is, well, it's just the next available rung on the ladder. It's like the next logical step. And I don't mean this to sound, kind of cynical in a way, but job titles, job roles are created by companies, and companies are organizations. They're paperwork that was filed to create a structure that enable people to sell things and make money and to provide some value and all those kind of stuff. So in a way, a company is not a real thing. And then the jobs within that company have been fabricated, right? They've been fabricated down traditional lines, which haven't changed in a long time. There's sales, there's marketing, there's operations, there's finance, there's technology, IT. Then you've got hierarchies of what people are called at the top and what people are called at the bottom. And I think in all of that, we've somehow lost the person. We've lost the idea that your development, your career, your colleagues' development and career is almost secondary. It's like the job title defines the progress that you're making. And actually, it's kind of, it should be, in a way, we're thinking about this, it's like the other way around. Like, how are you progressing? And then what way do we describe that in a way that's meaningful for the rest of the world? And look, I'm not naive. I appreciate that, if you want to move jobs at some point and no one's heard of your job title before, it's really tricky then to communicate, oh, well, I was in charge of X, Y, and Z. I was head of marketing. Then people have got you in a box. So, we have this system which functions in terms of translatable roles. But then I think the problem is that we lose sight of, well, what was the development that was required to get to that point? What is the development required in the future? We were running a program on Friday, and I really wanted to take the opportunity with the people attending it to remind them that their responsibility is also to develop themselves personally and their career. It's not just the company's job to provide 100% of the training. So let's go back to your example, Melodie. You've got this marvelous person. They're ambitious. They're determined. They want to move on to the next level. Let's think about that in two ways. Let's think about that from a career and a personal development perspective. And then let's think about it from a technical perspective. So we talk in the book, and we talked in my previous book of The Lost 90% about training, mentoring, and coaching. So let's think about where those responsibilities lie. For someone that is trying to progress into a specific job role, the training and the mentoring piece is highly relevant. So the first thing you need to understand is what training do you need to bring yourself up to the level of this new position, even if it is arbitrarily created for the company. We still know what that job looks like. So what is the training that is needed for that job role? And then the company's job is to provide that training. Okay, so that's your first question. Where's the skills gap? Is there a place where you are and a place you want to be? What the gap is, and what is it that we need to do to close that gap? The second piece is the bit which often falls off a cliff, which is the mentoring bit. So we identify the skills needed, but then we don't do the mentoring piece to support the development of those skills to a degree of competence. But let's say we did. That brings us to a point where the person has the required skills and knowledge to do the new job. So then you'd need to think about, well, how are we measuring that? How do we measure success for you? And then we also need to think about the career moving on from that. So beyond that job role, we need to understand what's the career this person is looking for, so we can attach the appropriate level of relevance to this development for them. So maybe they want to be a practice owner. Maybe they want to run multiple practices. Maybe that's the height of their ambitions and they just want to get to that job, and then they think they'll find a degree of happiness. So what we need to bear in mind is we need a degree of flexibility in this, because getting the next job, just like when any of us have ever had a pay rise in the past, it feels great for about 10 minutes. And then your spending increases, your world expands slightly to match the new salary that you've got. And it's the same with jobs as well. We get the new job. Hopefully it's everything that person expected it to be. But of course, if they are this driven challenge person, they're probably going to want more after that as well. So we got to think about the context. Where is all this going? And that's that career line, that consistent career, that personal development. And it doesn't always have to take the form of those specific training and mentoring things that we've just talked about around the competencies required for the job that you've described. The job might even exist, by the way. That's another topic about how employees, colleagues can create their own job descriptions based on a need they've identified. But we might come back to that in another conversation. But the other piece of it is actually quite interesting, because then you can start to think, well, what constitutes personal or career development? And that is marvelously broad and interesting. So that could be an Audible subscription for $10 a month, where they get unlimited access or access to a book a month. And they can buy a book a month to broaden their horizons and skills and knowledge by just reading some secular books about business, about people, or about other things. There's obviously, of course, a technical training element to it as well. Maybe in a more of a leadership capacity, thinking about how they could develop skills in that area. But then there's the bigger long-term picture. And I think there's opportunity to develop people in goal setting, financial planning, looking at their entire career, thinking about their end point, and then, well, what type of steps are they going to need to take to get there? Maybe a colleague or an employee now could be a business partner in the future. That conversation has literally come up in the last week with someone that we're working with in a different type of business, where the key to their success might actually be in the manager that they've hired. And they spent so much time worrying that the manager was going to leave that they didn't look at them as a potential business partner. And now, because we've taken that wall down, now they're talking about, well, could we acquire another business and I could help run those two businesses and mitigate against the weaknesses that you yourself have. So this is why I think this is a great conversation. And I think for you to have with a colleague, as I said at the beginning, it's fantastic that they want to grow. It's fantastic that they want to develop. It's fantastic that they see a career ahead of them. But creating milestones around both of those channels, the career, the personal development, and also the technical skills required to do the job, is super helpful. Without the context of a career, jobs in themselves can feel a bit unsatisfactory and arbitrary. But when you contextualize them against a longer journey that person's going on, you can really tie that person into the medium long term to a shared vision. And really, their potential, in a way, could reflect and support your potential as well.
Think I'd add to that too, because typically this type of person that comes up to you and says, I really want to do more, or I want to keep developing. As high functioning individuals, sometimes we forget or we overlook the fact that they actually do need feedback, and to continuously let them know, what do you want them to continue doing? What are some things that they could start doing, but also stop doing? I often
Mm.
see in situations like this where these high functioners, they people look at them and go, oh, they know what they're doing. They always sort it out themselves. They'll get the job done. And the challenge is, they start to feel disengaged because if you're not actually following through with when they come to you and say, hey, I'm really interested in this, and you kind of just nod your head and go, okay, yeah, no, noted, but there isn't that follow up of actually sitting down and, as you said, laying out, what are their career aspirations? What is it that they're really interested in? Is it just the
Mm.
job title to move up, or is it something else? If you don't actually help them feel like and actually genuinely listen to them, these are the people that you want to keep on your team, but maybe then trying to look elsewhere if they're not feeling fulfilled. Another great conversation. And as you think about that person that comes up to you and is super keen and is asking to have more responsibility and maybe do more within the practice, take a moment to celebrate that person. These are the types of personalities that you want to keep, and actually have a genuine conversation on understanding that person and why they would like to take more on. And that conversation is that point of thinking about career growth and personal development and thinking about the long term. A lot of times we sort of hear, oh, someone wants to take on more responsibility so they can just move to the next step in the title ladder, in sort of where they are in the clinic, and just move beyond without taking the big picture into consideration. So think about having that conversation of where that person wants to go and actually building a plan with them to help them achieve those next steps, to help them get to their larger landing pad. And so Rob mentioned training, mentoring, and coaching. Often for us, the training bit's really easy because these are the technical bits that you're standing there and you're showing them how to do. The tougher parts are really the mentoring and coaching pieces, which we can get into in more detail at a later time. But really just celebrate these high functioning individuals and take that moment to give them appropriate feedback and appropriate support in their career journeys. Thanks for listening. Until next time.